I took up archery at the National Veterans Wheelchair Games, and then I was just playing around with it for a couple of years. Then I decided I liked it, so I would shoot indoors. And I was at the indoor national tournament in Kansas City, Missouri, and I ran into a guy who was on the U.S. national team, and he said, "Why don't you come out and shoot with us?" I thought, well, yeah, how far? 90 meters? I thought, I can't even see that far. So long story short, I went out, shot with him. I made the U.S. team, and in 2004, I took the second place medals in the Paralympic trials in San Juan Capistrano and earned my slot to Athens, Greece. So I went with the U.S. Paralympic archery team to Athens, Greece in 2004 and wound up 10th in the world at that one, which, based on my experience, was where I should have been. We're trying for the 2012 in London. We earned 2 slots in Stoke Mandeville for the United States, but they belong to the country and not to those of us who earned them. So in April of this coming year, we have a Paralympic trials in Chula Vista, California at the Olympic Training Center, at which time we have to earn them for ourselves. The Paralympic Games are the second largest sporting event in the world, second only to the Olympic Games.
Amazing.
Okay.
You talked about your alcoholism, and I'm
Yes.
sure a lot of vets are suffering perhaps from the same disease. How did you pull yourself out of that?
Well, one of the things that led to it, Vietnam was the first war where amputees were actually surviving. And of the number of double amputees, 2 or more in Vietnam, only 1,084 survived. And they weren't really geared for amputees in Vietnam. So they didn't know how to handle us a lot, so they just kind of let us stay over on the side. And even though we weren't supposed to drink on the wards, we drank heavily. But they just didn't know how to deal with us. My son was a year old, and I realized I'd basically missed his first year. So I just quit cold turkey. And it was, you really have to want to do something. And I needed to get my head screwed on, and so I just quit. I'll drink every now and then, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, but I would be a very cheap drunk right now. I mean, a couple drinks and I'm toast. So.
And you're here representing the Military Order of the Purple Heart
Yes,
Service
ma'am.
Foundation. I want to ask Jeff to say a few words about the order, and we thank you for supporting us tonight, but tell us what you do and what services you're providing to wounded warriors.
What we try to do, and the foundation broke off in the mid-1950s so that we could raise the funds necessary for our service organization to support our veterans. And we do that through our countrywide 160 service officers throughout the country supporting all veterans of all wars, making sure that they have the VA hospitalization, medication, everything that is involved for them to survive. What's really important is that we try to work together with all the organizations. We don't sit by ourselves. The Wounded Warrior Project, we've supported them in the past. The older veterans, I think we've kind of laid the groundwork for the younger veterans. They're far ahead of us where we were, as has been said here. And I think what is most important to us is that, especially us from the Vietnam era, we've all said, and why we stay involved is we will never allow this generation to go through what we went. And I think that's the same that any parent does. They want something better for their children. For us, as the older veterans from Vietnam, we want something better for our veterans today, and we'll make sure that they have it.
Great. Thank you so much. When Wounded Warrior Experience returns, we'll look at how today's wounded warriors are treated by today's military.
HP Enterprise Services salutes all of the brave wounded warriors who have served the country. On Veterans Day and every day, We are grateful to those who have sacrificed so much defending our nation and ensuring our freedoms. Thank you from all of us at HP.
To you young men and women serving overseas, I have to tell you, the American people are so proud of you. Those of us who have served before you are so proud of you. The wonderful job that you're doing in serving and sacrificing on behalf of your country. Thank you.
The PenFed Foundation is a proud supporter of the Wounded Warrior Experience and would like to thank all service members and veterans for defending our nation's freedoms. PenFed Foundation, because military heroes need heroes too.
Welcome back to the Wounded Warrior Experience, presented by the American Veterans Center and brought to you by the Military Order of the Purple Heart Service Foundation. In this segment, we will be discussing the recovery process and how wounded warriors are cared for by today's military. With me are Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Workman. He is a Marine Corps Navy Cross recipient, formerly of the Marines Wounded Warrior Regiment, the author of Shadow of the Sword, about his experiences with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I have Steve McGuire, an Army Ranger who was wounded in Vietnam. He is currently the director of the Soldier Family Assistance Center at Walter Reed and a former president of the Army Rangers Association. Staff Sergeant Workman, you are one of the Marine Corps' most highly decorated veterans of the Iraq War. You received the Navy Cross for Valor in the 2004 battle for Fallujah. You've also fought a very public battle with PTSD, as chronicled in your book, Shadow of the Sword. Tell us about your own experience.
Going over to Fallujah in 2004 and being a squad leader, leading Marines in combat, you want to make the right decisions. You just want to do right by your Marines. And it wasn't everything going on around me did not bother me at all. But losing Marines, it really hit home for me. I got together with some close people and I said, how can we make a difference? You know, raise awareness. One of the biggest stigmas out there is with PTSD, TBI, mental injuries from this war. And I just wanted to put my story out there and let people know that it can happen to anybody and you can move forward and fight this.
What were some of the signs that you had PTSD?
For me, it was a couple incidents over there. But the mission doesn't stop because something bad happened. But it wasn't until my father-in-law flew out to California and I picked him up from the airport and I opened my trunk of my car and I went to put his suitcase in my car. And there was so many beer cans and he said, do you think you have a problem? I said, no, we can get it. And I was trying to elbow the trunk lid down. But that was the first time where I thought to myself, maybe.
Maybe this.
Yeah.
How did you deal with it? How did you pull yourself out of that?
Well, I left 3-5, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and I went to become a drill instructor at Parris Island, South Carolina. The good thing about Parris Island was, in order to get through it, there was a lot of physical training, so it was almost like detox for me. But just telling my story to inspire others, because there are so many people out there that they will not admit it. I would not expect them to admit it. But when I get Facebook messages and emails and phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning saying, thank you, that's how I wake up the next day and get ready for work. I try to live day to day. I don't try to get ahead of myself. Some days are a struggle, some days are better than others. We do find ways to live with it. We do find ways to kind of block it out and move forward. But there are certain things, no matter if it's 40 years, 50 years later, that will trigger something that happened in Fallujah, December 23rd, 2004.
How do you deal with being seen as a war hero when you are suffering from a disorder that historically has been stigmatized?
Quite honestly, that's when I really started to go, I guess, to hit rock bottom. I had left Parris Island as a drill instructor because of the PTSD. They sent me to Quantico, Virginia, And, I had this, when they told me, hey, son, your award came in, I'm like, the heck is he talking about? 2 years after the fact. And they said, we need to talk to your doctor to make sure that you can stand in formation and receive your Navy Cross. I said, Navy Cross? Well, it really took me back to the moment. That Navy Cross is a license to tell the story of the men that we lost. I wear it in their honor. I can tell you 1,000 stories of Marines and sailors that I served with that rate Navy Crosses, Medals of Honors, things of that nature, Silver Stars, but there just wasn't anybody there to witness it. So I wear it for them. I try to share their story so they're not forgotten.
Thank you. Steve, you were blinded in Vietnam. You're now the director of the Soldier Family Assistance Center at Walter Reed. You were married to your wife in 1970 at Walter Reed Hospital. You have 6 children. Tell me about your experience.
Okay, I was a platoon leader in the 9th Infantry Division. And on pretty much a routine day, I was the battalion recon platoon leader. And I was brought to a place by a helicopter and saw an area, a grassy area. And the enemy had slept there that night. And their impressions were lying in the grass. And we knew there was a booby trap there in the direction that I wanted to go in. And I told my 2-point man, there's the booby trap, dismantle it. So they went over there and they started looking, and they found the tripwire. And I saw the tripwire, but they'd tripped the tripwire. So the 3 of us got blown up. And those kind of things it was routine for us. It was not unusual. We did that all the time. But, you do it over and over again. I think you get complacent. You get tired as well. And we were awfully tired. And you make mistakes.
How do you help the families at Walter Reed?
One of the things I think that's important for me, particularly with my disability, I'm totally blind. I have not seen a speck of light in 42 years, day after tomorrow, okay? So that alone is important to a lot of families. And I know it is important because it was important to my family and many, many families that I've talked to. And that is a lot of folks, a lot of soldiers that come to Walter Reed, they're hurt significantly. And this is a very, very important thing. It's not just being wounded that ultimately going to get better and you're going to be okay. These are guys that are wounded significantly and will be functionally disabled for the rest of their lives. So the families are seeing their son or daughter, overwhelmingly sons, of course, in bed, really bad, and the question is, what the heck are we going to do now? You see? And I think that one of the things I try to communicate to them was there is a future. And it can be okay. Depending on what things you do. I tell people, look, this is not about the story of our life. The story of our life is not about what happened to us. What it's really about is what we did about what happened to us. That's the story. You got to come up with a plan, and you got to use what tools you can find.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve, for sharing your story. Thank you, Jeremiah. This is just amazing, and we will all remember this night.
At Rolls-Royce, we honor those who have sacrificed in the defense of freedom. Our mission is to power their mission and bring them home safely. Rolls-Royce, trusted to deliver excellence. America's wounded warriors have made great sacrifices to secure the freedom of our nation and our citizens. Saab North America is proud to honor their service.
Welcome back to the Wounded Warrior Experience. For Wounded Warriors, the experience does not end with their return home and discharge from military hospitals. It continues as they re-enter society. In this segment, we feature the stories of warriors who have returned from war, left the military, moved into rewarding jobs in both the public and private sector. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Captain Ryan Cools. He is Director of Alumni at the Wounded Warrior Project. He was injured in Iraq by an IED, lost his arm and leg, and suffered from a traumatic brain injury. Major Justin Constantine is on the board of directors of the Wounded Warrior Project. He is now serving with the FBI's counterterrorism team and Congressional Task Force for Wounded Warriors. Eric Wolf, wounded while in the Army. He's currently employed by Hewlett-Packard, also suffered from TBI. And we have Command Sergeant Major Bernard McPherson, PEO soldier, Program Executive Office soldier in the U.S. Army. Ryan, I want to start with you. Talk us through the adjustment process when you came home.
Well, I was in Iraq for most of 2005. My vehicle was struck by an improvised explosive device. After I was wounded and made the transition from the battlefield to Walter Reed, the support that I received from the doctors, the nurses, the staff at Walter Reed, my family, friends, and the organizations that are at Walter Reed was amazing, which certainly aided in my recovery and helped my family in dealing with what was going on with me.
When were your darkest days?
My darkest days were about a year after I was hurt. The support that's at Walter Reed and the organizations that are there, and you get the attention as coming through as a wounded warrior with wounds that are very visible is amazing. It's great. You get to do some great stuff, go to some great places, but then you start to make the transition out of that limelight, so to speak, and I kind of realize that, hey, that's not going to be around always, and I've got 2 missing limbs and the thoughts of the 2 guys that I lost to deal with, and kind of hits